Hi, I'm Linus Sandgren. I'm the director of photography on No Time to Die, and this is the Go Creative Show.
Hello and welcome to the Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers. My name is Ben Consoli, and today we speak with Linus Sandgren, the director of photography for No Time to Die. Linus, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to talk to you about the film. It was awesome, and I got an advanced screening a couple weeks before release, which is always so much fun. But I absolutely loved it and cannot wait to dive in. But before we get there, very quickly, I want to mention the sponsor for today's episode, MZ Empowering Filmmakers. Of course, follow us on your favorite podcast app, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And go to gocreativeshow.com for all things Go Creative Show. So, Linus, first of all, what a fun film to be part of. You're probably so psyched that it's finally out.
Oh, I feel so much. We've been waiting. Yeah, we've been waiting. It's been dreadful to wait, but no, I'm so happy that people get to see it now. It was such a joy to make. It's a very fun project.
Are you the type of person that if you have too much time in between when it's finished and when it's released, you keep going back and thinking, maybe I should have done this, I should have done that? Do you second guess yourself at all when you have so much of a time span?
I don't know. I think we were pretty happy with the film. I mean, we were really happy with the film. We didn't do anything to it actually after it was finished, even though there was time after. But no, I don't know. I don't think so. I think you have to be happy with what you've done, you know, and you always have, I think, some percentage that is going to have been compromised, you know, on any project. It's like it can never. It's really, really rare that you feel like 100% of the film is 100%. It's like usually there's always compromises. That's sort of part of the filmmaking, I think.
Yeah. And the compromises, I think, can give an even better result sometimes. At least totally. I find that in my own work.
Yeah, you learn from it too. I think you learn to, you totally learn from your mistakes and from how you can do it next time. And also some people may not even find it as compromises, you know. So
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And now when you join onto a film like this, it's a gigantic worldwide franchise that everybody has an expectation of when they watch it. How do you prepare? And in a article you did for The Hollywood Reporter, you discussed the idea of finding the soul of Bond. And I'm curious about that. I want to learn a little bit more into what was your process for finding it, and also what did you find?
We discussed a lot about making, or basically what is the soul of Bond? Yeah, I think the soul of Bond is something where you have to go back to your teenage years as well and think about how you saw the films at different ages as well. And to me, the core sort of Bond is something where it's, it is an adventure, obviously. Just like many other films that you usually really get attracted to in the teenage years, but you can enjoy as an adult as well because you have still perhaps a teenager in you or something. But it should really give you that, right? The sort of adventure, joy of watching it and have all kinds of ingredients from that, right? But so that I think was a lot of it was discussions around that, to go back to like how can we make this and really enchanting, interesting journey for everybody.
And you also had the unique challenge of, in addition to just jumping onto a franchise like James Bond 007, this is also the last film with Daniel Craig. So there's a lot of attention paid to it, and it's sort of the completion of this character. So did that impact the way that you thought about this film at all?
I don't think the fact that it was his last film, other than that the story obviously was based on very much concluding or wrapping up Daniel Craig's character. So in the writing, I think a lot of that came through. And then for us working with the story, it's like always, you work with the story that you have and try to find a language for yourself for how do we express this film? How do we visualize it. And you have to just go back to the script really normally. And in this case, we talked a lot about just creating that the dramatic journey that had to do with the sort of the core story of doing Daniel Craig's Bond, finalizing his journey, but also obviously in this film, it's centered a lot about his emotional journey as a character, and with his story being more driven by, I think, his own sort of heart than his, what do you call it, like mission or whatever from MI6 or from the government, but it's more about like driven by his heart, I think, and therefore we integrated a lot more about emotions in the film, but also some sort of melancholic tone to it, knowing it was going to be his last film.
Yeah.
So a lot of that was part of it, and I think we just wanted to sort of paint the brushstrokes really broad and go like very far to each end of the spectrum when we sort of designed all these different environments for him to go through, you know.
What is your prep process like? I mean, do you do a really in-depth storyboarding or visual concepting prior to a film like this?
We had lots of combinations of strategies for. I mean, a lot is sort of research going into trying to figure out on an early point where can we bring it, and how, where can we bring the story? Where do we go? If we know we're going to be in Norway in this ice cold environment, looking for references, images that could describe that, how would I want to visualize that? And I present it to Carrie, and together with production designer, we're working ourselves slowly through the looks of the film. When it comes to the storyboarding, it could be like certain sequences obviously needs to be planned in very high detail. So we had combinations of, for action sequences or where it was very technical with special effects, we would do storyboards, and we would do animatics, and we could do models, and even like miniatures, and actually miniatures that could move, or it was kind of intricate, different ways of just getting each department to work together. And from my point of view, for the lighting and for that stuff of the creation of the lighting, and we worked a lot with actually models and tried also lighting on models on miniatures, for the sets that we were building. But,
so you're not talking about like 3D modeling. You're talking about physical miniatures and lighting. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think I think that's kind of an interesting approach. And is this typical for you in your workflow, or is this something you employed just for this film?
No, but I like to do that. I mean, I think we work with that quite a bit. Like that art department builds miniatures that are usually in cardboard, that are just a set, so we could visualize it. You can go in there with a little iPhone or look at like people at the correct heights and see where things are. And we would do that for seeing sort of depth of sets before they built them, right? That's like how they like to present those models oftentimes. But I also use them for lighting. Like there was, for example, one set at Safin's island, that whole sequence, his island is a lot of that, like most of that is shot in Pinewood, on stage. And we discussed whether we should do that exterior garden, if we should shoot that outdoors, because it's an outdoor set. But we also wanted that whole sequence for as a theme to be in sunset, going from late afternoon sun into sunset. For the theme of that sort of sequence was very much lit that way. And so controlling the light, I felt like ideally we should build that on stage if we could. And it was just that the set was huge, so we needed a stage that fit that set. So they built, we tested, they built this model, and we tested ways of lighting that to fit a sun in there. And that was like very much thanks to the model that we could test with a light source and see if we could, find a way to open up that set in order to get the light in the right way. And that way you become more sort of prepared and economical, I guess, on the day too, if you do that, and you can very much, visualize it, doing it with your eyes and see it and try different. It's quick, it's quite easy to.
I'm getting really into, just like personally with my work with BC Media Productions, I do commercial work and stuff like that, but I'm becoming more and more obsessed with the previs process because it just, you have to invest in it a little bit, but I found it really opens up a lot of opportunities that you may not discover on set because you just don't have the time. And I found that I've really enjoyed that process. Are you seeing more and more people, cinematographers, taking advantage of doing like 3D renderings of sets, using Cinema 4D, that sort of stuff? Are you seeing that more?
I mean, we also had a lot of 3D. Oh, were you talking about like for setting up shots and stuff? Like
doing like you were doing with the miniatures, but creating that in 3D space so that you can sort of almost virtually scout a location that you build in 3D. Right. I'm getting much more into that, and I'm curious if people at your level are doing that as well.
No, definitely. I mean, we did that too. We did that on Bond as well. There were sets that were built. Many sets were built in 3D models in computer as well, and we could scout the sets with the camera in there and walk around and sort of visualize it that way too. So that's a really useful tool too, especially. When you can do it live and you're just like walking around in that set in 3D. We even had it with 3D goggles, so we could stand in a set and look around.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, when you have time to build the sets like that, and you have like the resources, that we did a lot of times as well. So there were we had multiple ways of preparing for different types of scenes, for different. Sometimes I didn't feel the need of going into the sets in those 3D environments like that, but for some we did, and for others, I think for lighting that wasn't really. I don't think that really works so easily yet to test lighting in 3D modeling. What I know, I don't know if you know, but you can obviously do it. It's just, I guess you need some render time and stuff to see it
exactly
properly, but to get. Sometimes it's easier. You're like in a room and you have a model and you can be 10 people around the model and look at it. If it's a physical model, and when you're in a computer, you can sit next to one or two persons and we can look together, and one person moves the thing around, the mouse around. But no, we had all kinds of versions, and there was like 3D rendered animatics, and there were also just 2D flat animations that we also did for other sequences. So we had multiple ways of testing. We tested a lot of things, tested camera movements, and we tested underwater camera track. We tested, cameras mounted on motorcycles, and how can we drive through narrow streets in Matera. There's all kinds of testing going on, Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the camera package you ultimately chose. I know it's a little bit of a mix. You've got some IMAX in there. You have some Panavision cameras in there. Talk to me about what you ended up choosing and why.
Yeah, so we kind of felt right away, me and Kerry, that Bond lives naturally in anamorphic 35. That is sort of what we felt is part of the soul of the Bond movies. But Kerry was so much into, maximizing everything. Like he wanted to make the sets larger than we could build them, and he always wanted to just maximize. He pushed us always to let's see what we could do if we maximize. So part of that philosophy then included trying to see if we could actually shoot some sequences in IMAX to really be you have the 240 in the movie theater, but in some sequences, it could be nice, like you're watching it in an IMAX theater, then you would the image would just drop below your audience in front of you, and you're even more engulfed in the scenes. So we took that as we got our opportunity to do it, and we felt like that could be really important for the whole opening sequence to do that. So that's like one of those things that felt like we could maximize the experience for the audience, really.
What was your experience like with IMAX?
It was interesting because I had shot with it before when we did First Man a little bit, and they are big, and heavy, really heavy cameras. I think they're about like 80, 90 pounds, and at first you think that would be complicated. Like you can put them on helicopters, obviously, you can put them on armed cars, motion, that kind of things, and dollies, but they are trickier to put on Steadicam or like handheld or drones or so. And we chose environments that were like, for example, Matera was a complicated environment to begin with, just to move a camera through those environments fast. Yeah. It's tricky. So that was part of it. But we learned actually as we started to work with them that they're pretty practical. Like they're very, they're boxy, so they're like square. And because they're boxy, they actually fit through a window easily on a car, while another camera would be like having the mag stick up, so you would have to have a special mag or not, know. So there's actually situations where they were pretty practical. The lenses go to like T2, 2.8. We shot 2.8 all nights. And then the mags they don't last that long. Like 1,000 footer is like 2.5 minutes, I think, or 3 minutes. So they're pretty short mags. And in the beginning it was trickier, like for everybody to work around it. You have, everyone is not familiar with it to begin with. So, but pretty quickly we took them. We started to take them underwater, and we took them on handheld. We worked much more handheld with them. So I really liked it.
It's interesting to hear you say that they're practical because, I have no experience with them. We've talked a little bit about them on the show with other DPs, but the consensus seems to be that it's a little bit more challenging than expected. And it's interesting to see that you sort of had the reverse. Maybe you went into it with a different expectation.
We had them for a while too to prep properly, and I think we thought at first like, how fast can we reload them, and there was we had people with us that could reload them pretty quickly, so we took that as a challenge on the camera crew as well to learn, to do that fast, and I think we definitely didn't use them handled in the beginning, but because we got more comfortable with them, we started to. So towards the end, the last things we're shooting is Cuba sequence and we shot so much handheld there. We had planned shooting that on dollies with remote heads. And
how come it changed?
We wanted it to be more handheldy feel to it. And so we had learned that we could do it. So we just did it.
How are you rigging these IMAXs handheld?
Just took them on the shoulder. Yeah, but
a 90-pound camera on the shoulder. Wow. Well, I guess with each mag only being 2 minutes, you're not rolling with it for hours.
Tough.
But
it was obviously very tough on the camera crew. But it did work actually. It wasn't that hard. It was hard. It was hard for them, but
you weren't the one holding that camera.
No, but it was hard. But it was it. I think they would say the same thing. They would say it's like, it was actually fun. It was fun. Yeah. We knew what images we got out of it, and it was like quite exciting to get it on that large negative. It's like so big.
Yeah, I imagine it gives you some freedom too, just being handheld, not constrained to a dolly or a crane or anything. It's kind of nice.
And also fun to explore, like with the stunt team and a special effects team, to get on a film like this, you get the resources to do proper testing beforehand, So we did a lot of that, and mounted them on we found a way to mount them on motocross, like what do you call them, dirt bikes.
Yeah.
So we could, drive through the narrow alleys on dirt bikes and so on.
Oh my God. Let's take a quick break and talk about our sponsor for today's episode, MZ Empowering Filmmakers. MZED. Now, you want to think about MZ as the Netflix for filmmaking education. And that's because when you become an MZ Pro member, you get access to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of high-quality, video-based filmmaking education and all the topics that we need to know here at Go Creative Show, like directing, cinematography, post-production, visual storytelling, and more. You can find all of that at gocreativeshow.com/MZ, MZED. But let's talk about the courses, because they have such a variety of different courses on MZ. Just a couple to note, one of their more recent ones, Indie Film Blueprint. It's a roadmap for how to plan, shoot, and sell your first indie feature. So that is exactly what we need to know. And of course, there's a new course on advanced editing in DaVinci Resolve, and the art and technique of filmmaking, which is another, the art and technique of film editing, which is another great editing course by Tom Cross, who is the editor of La La Land and No Time to Die, the two films that our guest today shot, or two of the films that our guest today shot. But there's so much more over there. And my point is that it's not just interesting courses, it's also educators that you know that are A-listers that are working at a really high level. For instance, Tom Cross, like we mentioned before, Vincent Lafray, Shane Hurlbut, Philip Bloom. It goes on and on and on. You can get 20% off your purchase by using GCS20 at checkout, GCS20. And that is on whether you get an MZ Pro membership, which I highly recommend, or you just buy individual courses, which you can as well. But it's all there at gocreativeshow.com/MZ, MZED, MZ, empowering filmmakers. That pre-credit scene at the beginning of the film is just such a spectacle. The stunts are out of control. There's so much going on. But I think what's interesting about it, and this follows through the entire film, is that it's always set in a reality of some sort. It's always grounded in some way, all of these stunts. And I think that's a really tough thing to do. There are many films that we've all seen that the stunts take us out of the movie sometimes because they're so unrealistic. And I think, and it's not even the way it looks, it's just what happens. I think you all did such a great job of making this film feel grounded and real. And I'm curious, is that something that you sort of put out there as, you know, part of your particular style, what you wanted to bring to the film? Or was that across the board, an initiative where people wanted it to feel as realistic as possible?
It was mainly Carrie. I mean, I couldn't agree more, though. but I know Carrie was very... that was a very strong opinion of his to begin with, to make sure that all the stunts that happen are both realistic and shouldn't be silly and being done in such a way that it looks like it cannot happen for real. It has to look like it can happen for real, and ideally they should happen for real as well. He was very much into that whole philosophy of grounding it in reality, because then it would feel more hard. And even though the film is an escapism and an adventure and larger than life, it still can happen. And because it can happen, that's sort of part of the soul of Bond too, I think, is like, I mean, Bond movies traditionally have been at least doing all the stunts for real a lot of times. I mean, they really like making the things in camera, but Carrie was very much into really grounding this into reality, definitely. Yeah. And we all agreed. I mean, I totally think that is important too, and especially, you know, also thinking about it from a storytelling point of view, that it doesn't matter what you do, you know, where you put the camera, unless it's also grounded in the story, in the emotions of the story. It's like if you don't know that he is running for his life, it's not as exciting to go with him on a jump, you know, or something. But if we know that he's chased or that he needs to get away from something, it's more exciting, obviously. So, and each of these things is so much more important to follow the story and to make decisions from that point of view. And that could be that you really want to be with Bond in the shot, and then suddenly you're in a position where you may not have thought you should be, because you think that you have to do something dramatic with the camera or do something crazy with it. But instead, it's actually kind of straightforward. You just follow the story. And what do you want to explore right now? Do you want to be with Bond, or do you want to be away from Bond? You know, it's just like when you create any film, I think, if you think about it in a dramatic way. But but that was the base of it, definitely, to ground everything in reality.
I want to talk about the look of No Time to Die a little bit. You have so many different landscapes that you're in. You're Cuba, Italy, you've got ice scenes, you're on set, you're in studios. It's such a combination of things, but it does feel cohesive. And I know certainly some of that work is done in color, but there must be some strategies employed in your lighting and in your camera package and just in your technique to keep consistency across so many different looks. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah. So exactly. No, but also, again, it's like it had to do with creating a rich film that takes you all over the place. It weave that into the storyline that ideally we should go, like, as you know, we go from something very icy and then we go to a sunset, very romantic setting. And that location was picked as well so that it could work both as a very romantic town and then suddenly change into something really hard and brutal. And the looks was very much planned out. And part of our challenges was obviously that we always set very specific looks for these different environments, so that, for example, the icy, usually so that we enhance the drama in it, so that the icy location should feel really cold and icy. Yeah. And the challenge with that is obviously that if it's sunny and windy, it's hard to make it look icy and cold. So we had those sort of weather challenges all the time to work with. And also part of my way of working is to create the images, in camera and on a daily basis. When we get the dailies back, I want the film to look the way it looks in the final movie. I don't want to change it in post or go into color correction later, not knowing what we're doing and inventing something then. So, and that's part of why I like to work on film, because it sort of it enhances color. It adds sort of a little more impressionistic effect to whatever lighting you do.
Did you create LUTs for your did you come on set with custom LUTs ready to go so that you could be as accurate as possible?
Yeah, so what you do when you work on film is more like you work with one project LUT, right, for the DI, which is, in our case, a LUT that is basically a Kodak print emulation LUT so that we can do a print. And it's that and slightly, I've used it on 4 movies now, but it's slightly wider white point than the film LUT. But other than that, we apply that in the dailies. And in this case, I work with the same dailies colorist as DI colorist. He's the same person, Matt Wallach.
Oh, good.
So, and I had a relationship with him from previous movies on dailies. But the thing is, it's that when we if we take it back to the idea of going to different environments and the discussions with Carrie, and you want to go to this romantic setting in Matera and then to a brutal sunny setting, it becomes very important. It became very important for us that we really worked with it in that way, that we kept Matera sunsetty and then later very sunny in order to make it look right. And in other situations like Cuba, for example, we wanted that to be night, but the most beautiful night we could think about in this case, or most sort of appropriate for an action sequence there, going out on the ocean as well and being naturalistic, to play it in twilight, so that when they also come out on that trawler, it's all sort of twilight rather than black nights. So if it would have been a black night, it would just have been a black ocean, but in this case, it's like a twilight ocean. So we paid a lot of attention and work to make sure that we shot that sequence. We shot over probably in total 6 nights, just arriving at the boat or getting away from that trawler and blowing the trawler up. Yeah, that whole sequence is shot, in camera, looking exactly like that, like it looks, right? So, and I love to work with color temperatures. So when we do lighting, I always light with the color temperatures in mind, and oftentimes mixing color temperatures so that in order to create more depth. So in a film like this, and specifically, for example, in the like break-in scene of the lab, we decided that it would be interesting to go from the title sequence into a night, because it could be, or like a really early morning or really late evening, and again, not have a black sky, but like a purpley sky, and then inside, going from that purple to green or cyan, shifting to cyan into a yellow, yellow and cyan lab that later then shutting off the lights, it remains yellow in the lab. Those sort of color combinations we thought of ahead of time and lit the sets that way in order to create an interesting environment, that knowing what we were going to cut to or cut from, So
yeah, and real life has many different color temperatures. So I mean, I think what you're doing is making it interesting, but you're also making it realistic.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's always based on reality. So it's sort of, the idea was that each environment he goes to should be able to exist. It's like realistic, but it may be kind of perfect, a perfect sunset, or a light that just happens to be exactly taking place right in twilight, but still you have those, you have that light and that nature. So I like to work naturalistically, but if a film like this could have more noir to it, so you would shut off lights, or you would work less front lit and more backlit and more moody. But I like to use sort of the realistic elements of reality. For example, fluorescent lights. There are cool white fluorescent lights that are cyan color when you shoot them. So I like to work that way and like use that instead of white light. So what you learn in film school or whatever is usually that you should gel the windows so they match the tungsten lights inside and you get everything white. That's sort of the base of photography. But I think I always break those rules and think it's better to use the realistic lighting, but you have to decide which ones you keep and which ones to get rid of. And for this film to become a dramatic journey, it also needed to become a colorful journey. And so we very much specifically designed scenes to be in specific lighting conditions, and we lit those sets to look the way we wanted to. And there were obviously huge challenges with that, especially for exteriors or real locations. Like we couldn't like be in Jamaica by his house and it wasn't like nice light. It couldn't be just a boring gray day. So we had to wait for light sometimes to make. It was important to make that work, But we had challenges also, like when we shot the foggy forest, for example. We had to have so many foggers to keep it foggy because it was very windy those days. So it's those kind of things, but it was deliberate choices for the story to be different from before, but also in combination with what would fit, that part of the story. Like with the foggy forest, it was sort of convenient for them to be able to hide, but also it was spooky. And
what would you say is the most challenging scene in the film?
I don't know. It's hard because it feels like we always push the limits. It feels like so.
And it's also so long ago for you guys, but still,
exactly.
I'm just curious.
I don't know. I mean, it's always a puzzle, with longer, like that whole Cuba sequence was a long puzzle of combining shots from Jamaica with shots from London, from water tanks that we built. I mean, amazing, like special effects crew, Chris Corbolt and his crew built this trawler rig to descend underwater and shoot underwater there. And we built it actually early on, and we were going to shoot there early on after we came back from Jamaica. And then we had challenges with, both that Daniel had to do an operation on his foot, which altered the schedule. So we had to push that scene that was already built and set, a huge metal, weird rotisserie rig thing in a big underwater pool. And we had to take it out from the from the studio in order to shoot that later when he was fit to do that scene.
Oh, it's such a heartbreaker to hear that. It's like,
but then we instead had to go into that pool and shoot underwater shots with a little girl under the ice, and with ice that they had kept from the winter in order to shoot in the pool later.
wow.
So we had cut out ice that we could like put into the pool and shoot underwater shots. So it was like with IMAX cameras. It was like. So it was lots of like challenges like that. It was just both logistical, but also that everything was taken just a step further, like from a normal scene. Another challenge was obviously in Matera that you have an action sequence that you put in a town that's not practical to actually drive in at all.
Yeah.
And that was obviously visually interesting, that it was a very dangerous town to drive fast in. But to plan that with I think they had 2 exits to the town. You could come in from one and go out on the other, but it wasn't like many roads going into the village. So you had to, only enter from 2 sides or maybe 3, but I think it was like 2 sides. So it was a logistically complicated town. And then we found that the lighting in the town was not the way I wanted it for the night scene. So we turned off all the practical lights that we saw in those night shots and did our own lighting in the village and spread out, sky panels all over the town, controlled, that we could create sort of this flame effect of them because they had burning flames out there. And
yeah.
So we just sort of had to do it a little bigger, everything. And I guess for everybody, it was challenges like that. You had to have hundreds of people helping. Just locking up traffic
Well, that was sort of in line with the last question I had, because I know we're running out of time. But I'm just curious. I mean, when you join a project like this, it's a massive, massive undertaking, a huge film. Was it your biggest film, budget-wise, to date?
Yeah.
So you go into something like this, your biggest film. Where are there challenges in showing restraint when you have resources well beyond what you're used to? Does it become a situation where you have to stop yourself from making it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger just because you have to? Like, I can imagine that being challenging for you and the director, is just knowing you have all these resources, but also not wanting to do so much that you sort of lose track of the initiative. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think it's always the same.
Really?
It's like, because you always aim higher than you have budget for. And then in this case, I think, it was a matter of like how many countries can we go to, but he wrote the script so that he went to different countries. When they wrote the script, it was like restrictions there. And then, you kind of, I must say, I'm very happy with how the production and how the producers worked with this film, that they were very accommodating. They really wanted also to do a lot in camera and practically, and the way we sort of, our methodology, how we wanted to do things, we were very much in sync. And no, I think you still feel like you aim, like a little higher. No, most of the time though, we really had what we wanted, and we obviously, I was also like sometimes amazed how great resources we had for things, but it was just beautiful to be able to do things the way they should be done. The things were planned to be done in a certain way, and we did it that way. It wasn't like any waste of money ever. It was always like, still like restraints. Like we didn't have enough of the days that we really wanted to, it's always like some sort of, like any film, like always some sort of compromises on the way, but it's incredible though to be. I feel very like happy that I could be on a project where thinking about like an action sequence in Santiago de Cuba that practically would be impossible to shoot for 6 weeks at night in any village or town, and then we're like able to build it on the backlot of Pinewood, like as a big. Basically a big outdoor backlot set that is equivalent of a studio permanent backlot, but here they build it temporarily for this movie. and it was like 2 stories with the rooftops and interiors we could go in and out of, and we could just design everything from scratch and design the shots from scratch and design the lighting, everything from scratch. So those things are really, amazing to be able to do. And
how do you go back to regular films after this? My God, it's like that the feeling of just being on a set like that must be so overwhelming that it's like, how do you even go back?
No, but you do that on other films too. It's just that the scale of it was bigger. So I think it's in relation to the film, it's just great that this production actually let us do it the way that you should do it in a film. And on another film, you may be compromised by like, okay, we can do this practically, or we can build this set, or if that's what you want for a scene, it's like, we really want to build this. Oh, we can't afford it. Let's shoot it on location. And then there's some sort of compromise involved. But sometimes, like you do that anyway. You like here, you build it, or you shoot it on stage if you want to, or on location if you want to. Depends what it is, right? But I would say the philosophy of how to use the budget was really good on this film, and it could be on other films too. It's just this also had more budget, so that was exciting to be able to shoot it the way that it was. It should be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the film is awesome. I'm sure all of you guys watching have either seen it or plan to, and you will not be let down. No Time to Die. It's in theaters now. And of course, I'll put links to all the things we talked about in the show notes, including Linus's IMDb. And we're talking about some pretty substantial films here. American Hustle, First Man, La La Land. It just goes on. And please, if you haven't already been enjoying his films, you can go and check them out for yourself. And also, when you shot Joy, did you shoot Joy as well?
Yeah.
So you were one of your scenes was right outside my windows over here. My office was in Haverhill, Massachusetts, and that's where I'm recording this from. And you did one shot of like our big sort of old style looking downtown. And it was like the talk of the town here in Haverhill that there was a big motion picture coming in. So, yeah, I mean, I see that scene every single day when I pass that street. So
that's amazing.
Somewhere. I know. So I feel if only I knew you then, we could have done some behind the scenes work, but it is what it is.
Amazing.
Exactly. So everybody, please go and check out Linus's work. We'll put links to it in the show notes. Linus, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had a good time. The conversation was awesome, and we'll have to have you back.
Thank you so much.
All right, I want to thank Linus Sandgren, Director of Photography for No Time to Die. Go and see that movie. It is awesome. And finally, it's out after a long, long delay. So go out there, support it. It's so good. You guys are going to love it. I also want to thank our sponsor, our producer, Connor Crosby. You can find him at ignitionvisuals.com, and Dave Siegel from siegelsound.com. He mixes and masters and makes the show sound so good. You can reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, YouTube, where you can see our episodes. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast app, great. Certainly continue to do that. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And you can find us on all of your favorite podcast apps by searching Go Creative Show. All things Go Creative Show at gocreativeshow.com. And if you're interested in what I'm doing, you can check out my Instagram at Ben Consoli, where I post all about the work that I do on different projects around here, commercial work, videos, live events, all of it. It's all there at my Instagram at Ben Consoli. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you on another episode of Go Creative Show next week. I screwed up that ending. Oh well, what are you going to do? Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next week on another episode of the Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers.